What does HR do? What do you provide? Let's say.
So HR essentially.
What does it stand for? Let's say staff.
Human resources.
Yes.
So how you manage human beings in a business essentially, and it comes down to what their rights are. It's protecting the employee and the employer from discrimination, from treating their staff unfairly, and it's very simple. Health and safety go hand in hand, because if I am going in to do my health and safety and they don't have a HR, sure, there's no point, because then if somebody breaches a health and safety violation and they don't have a HR department, there's nothing that can be done. So your human resources allows you to actually hire and fire people, to have those policies in place that this is how we work in terms of, if you don't do your job, here's what we can do. We can either put you on probation, we can give you an improvement plan, we can train you up a little bit more, and then if in 2 months' time you're still not up to it, unfortunately we'll terminate your contract. A lot of the time people just, because it's a history, it's only now in the last few years that HR has become quite serious,
Yeah.
And you just need to have people on a contract, and they need to have a handbook, which is it's very similar to your safety statement. How do I handle a grievance? If you're bullying me, who do I go to?
But that's another one. People. I could be sued today whenever I'm firing somebody, even though I have the rights to fire them. They've made a mistake. But that's thanks to Henry, my business partner here, because he's on the ball. He's the one that contacted you realistically. And so let's say I want to fire somebody. They made a mess up. They fucked something up. I have the rights to fire them. It's a big financial but I can't fire them because they've been with me for 2 years. They didn't get a warning. They didn't get written. If I fire them, they can sue me, and they will be 100% successful.
Yeah.
So if anybody who's watching this and you run a business, that's why you should have a HR and health and safety, because you'll be sued.
You will, and you'll be more likely to be sued for an unfair dismissal.
Unfair dismissal is a big thing.
And that is essentially the simplicity of that you have someone on a contract of employment and you think you're sorted. No. But you didn't follow the procedure, your own disciplinary procedure. Your disciplinary procedure is your Bible. How do we handle problems, and how do we discipline people? There's the law and everything. It's verbal warning. Most of the time it gets, not everyone, but give 2 verbal warnings. Then you have 1 written warning. And if you have a final written warning, essentially you have a meeting and you give them an ultimatum of, you need to get this job done. We're going to give you an extra 3 months. If you do not follow those procedures or meet our standards as a company, we'll be terminating your contract. And then after that is when you let them go. But if you just... even...
Look, a lot of people who will be watching this, they're simple people who have a small business and they don't have all that knowledge.
No.
I know when I started and somebody pissed me off, I would just fire.
Just on prices, just to clarify as well, I mean, companies are different depending on what they're offering. You just need a contract of employment template. It's going to cost you less than 100 quid. And you have that there for every employee. You change the hours, you change. And how HR works is, within the first 5 days, every new employee is supposed to get their 5 core terms of employment, which is the company that they work for, their general hours that they're going to be working, their rate of pay, the location of work. They're and the company obviously that they're and who they are, their name and their address. That's supposed to be done in the first 5 days. After 2 months, they're supposed to get their full contract of employment, which includes their job description, annual leave, sick pay, grievances, bullying, harassment, and all that sort of stuff. And once you have those basics in place, you're essentially legally compliant with the law. But there's so many different things other elements that might come along. And again, I was a HR guru 3 years ago, but I haven't updated myself on the HR
Here's
law.
a HR question, right? And I have a good one for you, right? Let's say 2 of my employees have a beef between each other, and one of them is bullying the other one, right? Let's say this escalates and one of them decides to sue. But who do they sue? Do they sue me as an employer, or do they sue the other guy who works in here?
That's a very...
tough one, isn't it?
That's a very tough, complicated... Well, okay, we'll go... Now, this is not fact. I'm just saying this is how I...
we're just yapping here.
Just because I know there might be a few... when I show this to people, they'll be like, Laura, you said the wrong thing. But how essentially that will come down to 2 things. If you as an employer saw that this grievance was going on for a long period of time, and if it was interfering with work or not, you would try and sit them down And what we would do is we call it a conflict resolution. So
Well, if I ignored it,
if you ignored it, you didn't do everything that was reasonably
because
practical.
this is happening on big sites. Because every time when they get a labor or a newbie, right? What do you call them?
Yeah, well, like, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
But
he gets this stick.
you're not allowed. Oh, listen, I used to love years ago when someone walked into the bar for the first time. I was like, lovely. I would ask them to
Yeah.
do the craze. Go get me a crate of diet water. You know, the long stand, for anyone who doesn't know, you know, it's kind of a hospitality joke where you get them to go to a bar, the local bar, and you say, would you ask them for the long stand? And every barman will know, okay, just leave them standing there for about 15 minutes. And then they, you know, get them to go to another bar. So they'd be about 35 to 40 minutes going to 3 different bars and standing at the bar. And they're like, I'm waiting for the long stand. Yeah. And then the last person would say, oh, did you enjoy your long stand? And they're like, oh my God, I've just been standing here doing nothing. You know, it's such a simple thing. But that was what we call hazing. It's a bit of joke.
Yeah, I know.
You
But
can't do that now.
realistically,
now.
that person could sue because
Oh,
of that.
now they can't. Like
Now,
even years ago they could as well, but now people will because, again, and I always say, if you want to know what your rights are, go on to citizensinformation.ie.
Yeah.
It will tell you everything. And I think over COVID and the pandemic, a lot of people got to see what rights they have, which they would not have known beforehand. And now they're coming back into their workplace saying, I am entitled to this.
Yeah, and there
Here's
will be
what
more of that now.
Very much so. But the bullying and harassment one is one of my... It's dangerous because now if you say like even me as a consultant, I have to be so careful with how I address people, how I speak, you know, especially when I'm dealing with different cultures or different languages. I have to be respectful to that. And yeah, but like in that case, essentially it could either go where if you say you sat them down, you've done everything. If you didn't sit them down and do something about it, and again, it depends on the claim, and I'm not saying you would, but you would be slightly responsible for not trying to resolve the conflict. If he put in a case for the bullying harassment, that I think would be a civil case. But I'll give you a good example. I had a client, been working with him for 4 years. He hired a new manager. I mean, I haven't had to deal, he's been on retainer with me for 4 years. I think I've had to deal with him twice. This new manager came in. Within 3 months, I was in every second week.
Why?
Because the way he was speaking to the staff.
Oh.
Yeah, and the staff were getting really, really upset. And I kind of said to myself, okay, maybe he's, you know, I'll meet him. Met him the first time, thought, okay, you know what, he's not as bad. I just told him, listen, just be aware of how you're saying, don't undermine them. Just speak to them a bit nicer. Like they're doing the work. And I told him, here, listen, you have to follow these procedures for HR. This is what I'm hired for. Follow these procedures and you'll be fine. And essentially then he wanted to fire someone, but he had no justification. He just didn't like him as a person. So you can't do that. So I asked him, I said, will you do me a favour and write up where he's going wrong? Now, he wrote me up an essay. I mean, an absolute essay on this guy and how poor quality his work was. So I said, okay, fair enough. So I said, let's do a performance review with this gentleman. We'll bring him in. So that was all fine. Then my client had asked for the manager not to be there in the performance review because he wanted to kind of get the employee side without the intimidation of the manager and kind of get his view.
Yes.
Oh, that did not go down well. The manager got up, and when I've never been spoken to like this before, he started screaming and shouting at me, insulting me, telling me that I was only a small little girl and I had no rights and you don't know what you're talking about and I'm the man here and all. And it was just this ignorant. And he actually got, like, he's a 6'5" guy, and he got up off his chair with these big arms, like basically screaming at me. And then my client tried to stop it, and he put his hand up to my face and said, she's not going to get away with this and I won't deal with her. And I basically was just started laughing. And he said, what are you laughing? I said, I'm going to sue you right now. And he said, what? I said, no, I'm going to sue you for harassment, for violent behaviour, and I'm going to put in a civil claim against you. I am the HR manager for this company. You're nothing. I said, so this is what I can do to you. And could you imagine how you're going to speak to your other staff? And he said, well, let's let, I can't say my client's name, let's him decide. And my client said, I've had no problems for 4 years. She's been with me. She's the HR manager. She's trying to tell you not to treat people like this, and this is how you speak to her. So what do you want me to do? He was like, I got you in to tell you how to speak to the staff and under the right way, and you're screaming and shouting, and you're basically like, it was so aggressive.
I'm presuming he was fired after that.
He all my client was said, I choose Laura, and he got up off the chair and he left. Now, and that wasn't fair, because then my client was left without a manager, and he was a great manager. But he kind of had to decide, what do I want? Do I want all the hassle for all my staff giving out, or do I want a good manager? And he went away. I didn't listen. That was a very specific situation. But at that time, he spoke to me so badly. I would never actually have sued him. Like, come on, I wouldn't have done that. But I wanted him to realise that
You have the power to.
that I could. And it's not going to be to do with my client. It's a civil case. You are treating me very badly. So let's go.
Yeah.
You know?